this afternoon, just before we started, but I did have the opportunity and the privilege to speak with I'd say former sergeant, but he's still Lonnie Williams. And Lonnie served in Vietnam, and I'll let him tell you the details about that. But he also wrote a book called In the Face of Peril. In the Shadow of Peril, sorry. And I haven't read it, I didn't know about it until I just spoke with him on the phone. And thank you to Petra and to Jason Smith for introducing me, sort of, to Lonnie. And Lonnie brought his kids tonight, some of his 5 children, and his wife Judy, who is right there. And so we want to welcome Mr. Williams, or should we call you?
Lonnie works.
Okay, I'd like to welcome Lonnie tonight. So I'm sure we're going to do a really interesting thing.
Yeah, we'll find out. So, first off, let me thank you, because honestly, for the Vietnam veteran in particular, it really felt like, and to this day feels like, nobody really cared what we've been through. And you know, there's that line between wanting that known and whining. I don't want to be on the other side of the whining, but from what I understand from the stories my dad told me and uncles that had come back from World War II, the Vietnam veteran definitely got a different reception. I do remember they told us when we landed back in the United States to get out of our uniforms as soon as possible because they didn't want us harassed. And that wasn't what we were thinking about those 365 days we were there. We were dreaming of different things, and not parades, but just some appreciation for what we went through. Vietnam is a very different war. 80% jungle warfare and guerrilla warfare, as opposed to World War II, which was roughly 20. Depends on where you're drawing your figures from. So it was a difficult war. Before I get started, and I've got some photos to pass around, some items here, including a grenade. There's a story about how that got home, and it's all.
Right.
It's been what we call DWAT. I personally took it apart, disassembled it, took the Semtech explosives out of it, the blasting cap, smashed it into itself, wrapped it in paper, and mailed it home to my dad. And I thought it was being real clever because I didn't put a return address on it.
Oh, gee.
Yeah, because that was kind of not okay. Yeah. You know, even without the explosives in it. So, you know, so before we get into it,
Did he laugh?
he didn't know what it was. He wrote me back and said, "What is this tin can thing?" And I wrote back as cryptically as I could because they read some of our mail. I'll explain when I get home, if I get home. So yeah, before we get really started, I wanted to dispel some, they're not myth, not misconceptions, misrepresentations about the Vietnam War, because again, it was a very unique experience, and unlike the other wars, the media and Hollywood, the liberal media and liberal Hollywood, really misrepresented us and what we were doing and the whole cause. To me, it felt like, and to my fellow soldiers, it felt like we were fighting against them as much as we were those armed with rifles and other weapons. But one of the things that really, and it really is triggered for me, is to hear that we lost the Vietnam War. I've heard that on the news, I've read it in magazines, I've even heard it from the pulpit. And I'm here to tell you, and I'm ready to defend that. If anyone wants to take issue with it, I'm ready to defend the argument that we did in fact not lose that war. We in fact won it. But to recognize that we did win would play against the narrative that was being pushed, that it was a bad war, it was an unjust war. We were actually invading Vietnam, which we were not. We had, that was called the Truman Doctrine. We had agreements to go in and protect any nation threatened by communism. And then what was the other one? The Truman Doctrine, Gulf of Tonkin Resolution power was given to Lyndon Johnson, President Johnson, power to enlist military aid to protect any country that had come under the umbrella of our protection. So we were in fact fulfilling those promises. Now whether it was wise or not, I don't know, but we did not lose that war. I happened to be there, I got there in 69, December 6th of 69, and then served through 70. And in May, early May, May 3rd for my unit in particular, President Nixon, for all his stuff, did something that Kennedy and Johnson didn't do, and I felt didn't have the nerve to do because of his political suicide. He ordered the invasion of Cambodia. And that started a downward spiral for the North Vietnamese that they never recovered from until we left the country. Now, I got a little map up here, and please excuse it, it's the best I could rake together real soon. If it looks real old, let me tell you how old it is. On the flip side, there's an advertisement for a brand new appliance for the home called color television. So this is an old map, okay? But it's still, right here we have North Vietnam, and that border right there is South Vietnam, the demilitarized zone, DMZ is right there. This is South Vietnam. Saigon is right in here, and my unit, 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment, was assigned to protect all this region around the capital because that was a prime area to hit. And then we spent a lot of time in this little bump here called the Elephant's Ear, because it looks like an elephant's ear. Because what was going on is North Vietnam was sending troops, material, all kinds of things down a nifty little path called the Ho Chi Minh Trail. They were coming down through Laos, which is this blue country here, down into Cambodia, and then dispersing those materials all into Vietnam. They denied doing it, but we knew it was going on. So May 3rd, 2nd and 3rd Squadron of my unit was sent in there, and then a few days later, 1st Squadron, which was the squadron I was in C Troop, so A, B, and C, I think D Company 2 were part of 1st Squadron. We were sent in. I was recovering in the hospital from my second wound at that point, so I missed the actual crossing at the border. But they went in here, and I was telling, I think Rob or maybe it was Jason, I originally heard that we captured, in the 58 days we were there, we had a time limit. In the 58 days we were there, we captured or destroyed 10,000 tons of munitions, food, supplies, and ammunition, weapons, and stuff like that.
Wow.
Just to check my numbers, I did Wikipedia, how you pronounce it? Yeah, I Googled it, okay? The number's more like 60,000 tons. So North Vietnam was claiming they weren't even in Cambodia. And when we went across the border into Cambodia, there were riots in the universities. People were claiming, okay, first you invade Vietnam, now you're invading another country, you're colonizing. No, we weren't. We were trying to stop American deaths and South Vietnamese deaths. After that invasion, when we came out 58 days, that's not much, really, 2 months. That year, 1970, the death toll for Americans dropped by not quite 1/2. It lacked 1,000 being half. The following year, it dropped by another half. So taking all that ammunition, by the way, we captured over 1,000 prisoners as well. That invasion saved so many American lives. And it was one of the big turning points in the Vietnam War. I kind of got ahead of myself. The 1968 Tet Offensive, which many of you probably, if you're old enough, you heard about it. The media built that up as the North Vietnam GIFs, scoring big. They took over every provincial capital in South Vietnam, but they didn't hang on to them for more than a few days or even weeks. And the Viet Cong, who are the non-uniformed, under the radar fighting force of the North, they actually specialized in kidnapping, rape, and torture, and intimidation. They were not a noble group of people. They were not American patriots of the Revolutionary War, even though they saw themselves as such. But anyhow, they were basically decimated. The 1968 Tet Offensive, in spite of what the media said, was a flop for the North Vietnamese. So along comes Nixon. He says, you're going into into Cambodia from Vietnam. We were staged here in the province of Tay Ninh,